Good morning, everyone. Hello and welcome to the second season of VET Talks, the podcast hosted by DVBB and powered by MetaVet Plus. I'm Antonio Gennarelli, I'm project manager at DVBB, and I'm very happy to be also the host for the second season of the series of podcasts. I'm very excited to initiate the second season of podcast, also with a very special guest that we have here today with us, Maud Seghers from VVOB. She's a Global Strategy Education Advisor at VVOB here in Belgium, in Brussels, and thank you for being here with us.
Thank you, Antonio, for the invitation. Happy to be here.
It's my pleasure. So we start I was reading through your title, also through your experience at VVOB, but also abroad. But my question is, also my curiosity is, how do you become a Global Strategic Education Advisor?
After quite some steps, I would say. Well, actually, you bring me back to the 1990s, so the previous century. I actually started my career at VVOB, working in Vietnam as a teacher trainer. At the time, the work of VVOB was still quite different from now. We sent out individual experts to support institutions in many different countries around the world. But over time, VVOB really consolidated its work, focusing on teacher professional development and school leadership development. And that is really, from the beginning, I would say, of my career has been a big passion of mine. Having been a teacher educator myself. And then after having worked in Vietnam for a couple of years, moved on to graduate studies in the US, did research in Africa, worked for the Association for Development of Education in Africa, so looking at policy making and funding of education in Africa. So always been in the sector. And then at some point I decided to come back to Belgium, and here I am.
Lovely. I think really your experience, but also a bit your life, if I may, reflects probably the work of VVOB in a global scale, across different regions and so on. So we know of a strategy that you've been implementing in the last period, in the last few years. It's called the VVOB Learning Unlimited strategy. You know? And across all these, I would say also missions or departments at the global level, where you also come from actually, but how do you bring them all together? Does this strategy help you in this way, or it helps you on a daily basis also to inspire you in your work?
It does. It's really the first longer-term strategy that VVOB has developed. So the timeline of the strategy is aligned with the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a strategy until 2030, and VVOB really sees itself as an implementing partner for the SDGs, and then of course specifically SDG 4, and when you think of TVET, of course also SDG 8. And for us, well, one of the main features, I would say, of VVOB is quite a big emphasis on shared leadership. So as staff, we are quite involved in shaping strategy and also in implementing it. So, and I like that quite a bit, because it means that the strategy is really alive in your daily work. So for example, in my case, I work together with colleagues in monitoring and evaluation and research it's an internal innovation project to standardize our success indicators for a flagship program of our strategy that's called Skilling for Sustainable Futures. And so our ambition with that group of people from head office and from our country offices is to really get our theory of change right, standardize indicators, digitize our monitoring and evaluation. So it's nice to be implicated in innovation within the organization and for the implementation of the strategy.
Yeah, it's a place that tries to change as the world changes around it. So with all the partners and the staff working with you, all the colleagues, it's a whole process of growing and changing and so on. And this a bit very much reflect what you work also on the ground, because you mentioned, for example, at the beginning that you started your career in VVOB as a teacher trainer, But I believe that this is still a primary mission for VVOB at the moment. Is that correct?
Absolutely. So teacher professional development and school leadership development is really the core business of VVOB. For that, we work together with ministries of education and the institutions that are responsible for this professional development. And of course, the choice to focus on these particular group of people is for us not only a principled one, but also because of the power that teachers and school leaders have in terms of improving learning outcomes for children and youth, from early childhood education all the way to upper secondary education in our case. And they make a big difference mostly for the least privileged learners. So
I'm sure. But for example, across all these projects, would you like to share one with us? One examples that remained with you, or that perhaps can be also an inspiration for our audience.
I'm going to link it to the flagship program that I was just talking about. So that flagship is focused on a number of sectors. For now, our projects are mostly focusing on the agricultural education and training, and so it's teacher professional development and school leadership development to improve the quality of that education and training. It's general secondary education and secondary TVET. And why I like this particularly is because it's focusing on a very important sector for youth employment, which is agri-food. So in many countries, this is still a primary employer for young people. A second reason why for me it's very important, it's really a sector that's very much a prime sector in everything to do with greening education and particularly also greening TVET, because on the one hand it needs to adapt to climate change, and on the other hand it really is also quite the contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. So this whole investment and movement towards green skills for me is really important, and that's something that we're working on. So both in Ecuador and in Uganda we are working on that together with teacher professional development institutions. In Uganda, it's quite exciting, I think, our work there, because we focus on initial education or TVET teacher education, which is quite special because not even all countries around the world have dedicated institutions for the pre-service education of teachers. So that for us, it's a long-standing partner now in Uganda, and one where we can do nice innovations, because so the institute is called NICA, the National Institute for Instructor Training in Abilonino, and we do some of the work that we are doing with them is preparing the institute to train its future TVET teachers to do project-based learning, study and career guidance, work-based learning better, really working together with world of work actors from agri-food.
This can have a great spillover effect.
I think so, yes.
Working with the teachers and then also sharing the experience, because this makes it even more motivating for them to continue working into this sector and keep being a teacher also as well for their students at the end.
I think that's a very important point. And so one of the VVOB also invests quite a bit in research. And so one of the exciting researches that's going to start soon is a longitudinal study of student teachers, not only at NICA, but at other teacher training institutions in Uganda as well. And what we really want to see is, thanks to this teacher training, does the sense of self-efficacy of teachers improve? So do they feel more confident to then to implement new innovative pedagogies? And does their commitment to the teaching profession remain? Because of course, for many young teachers leave the profession, and potentially even more so in the TVET sector, where they also they're technically skilled, so they have many other employment opportunities as well. And many teachers actually do have this dual profession in the real world. So they have, many teachers have their own businesses while they are also teaching.
It is often also what we ask in Europe for industry leaders or entrepreneurs to share their experience with students and so on, but also we want to make sure that those who are actually teachers do keep being in the profession for the future because of all the importance that they hold in the sector. My next question is, I see that you're active across different sectors. We are active across different regions of the world, and I suppose also across a different variety of partnerships. Across, of course, this very complex environment out there. How can also an association like the VVOB, as we represent training institutions across the world, across 4 continents as well, how can we work in synergy in order to continue empowering teachers, to make sure that, for example, the profession is attractive or continue innovating in the sector?
I think when I look at the work of EVBB, there's a couple of topics, I would say, that are really very close to what VVOB is doing as well, and that are really important for the teaching profession. One that really comes to mind is the work that you are doing on ending gender-based violence in TVET. Hugely important topic. Obviously, everything around gender equality and TVET should be top of mind. And gender-based violence is quite the issue also in the countries where VVOB works. Because many of the fields of study are quite gendered in who is attending, right? So very male-dominated fields of study, others where it's almost only girls. And when you see the young women moving into some schools where there's almost only males, then first parents can be scared to send their daughters there. For girls, it may not feel safe. So raising awareness around gender-based violence and actually finding ways to prevent it or to address it when it happens is quite important. So we would love to learn more about the work of EVBB in that area. And I know that you have resources coming up from that work as well. And VVOB is working on a global resource on gender-responsive pedagogy for TVET that includes teaching and learning support materials from around the world. So I think we would love to include that work. And then where I think VVOB can learn more. We are taking steps, but I think we can become better at it, and it would be really interesting to learn from your experience in that, is through collaboration with the world of work. So our focus has been up to now very much really focused on the education side of things, but clearly in TVET, bringing together the quote-unquote supply side of skills with the world of work is super important, with the actual demand side of skills. And so we are hoping to announce some exciting partnerships on that in 2025. But we would love to learn more about how you really make those connections. So one of the sectors that you have been working in a lot is, I think, also tourism.
That's correct. That is true.
Yeah, and that's also very exciting for us because tourism is one, besides agriculture, it's one of the sectors that also is super important for youth employment in countries where we work. Also a sector in high need of greening, and VVOB has already done some work on skilling for sustainable tourism in Ecuador. And we would love to pick that back up. That
is interesting that you bring it up, because indeed the tourism is one of the sectors where also the VVB is very active, but in general it's the one where we are trying the most to talk with industry leaders, to talk with companies, where you have a great variety, and also you have global companies. So it's really the one sector where you need to have this kind of international partnerships that start from the local ground, where also, I mean, we both work thanks to our offices or thanks to our members, but then they all have to scale up, because tourism is indeed a global phenomenon that transcends in this. But it's very interesting because actually we are setting a little bit the agenda for 2025, and for us it's very important as today in particular, because just the now Erasmus Plus program guide has been released today. So this will give us a good chance also to set the priorities and also some timetables for it. So this is particularly important, but I think we should also pinpoint across all these opportunities that that we have on fighting, for example, one important and also challenging dimension, which is ending gender-based violence, or at least fighting it across all sectors and across TVET. But what would be the challenge there? What do you think we should really focus on in terms of institutional levels, or like limitations that we may encounter when we really try to green TVET or to NGBV? Since you have the capacity and the possibility to compare it across very, very different socioeconomic context, local context, and so on.
I think a lot of this change really is deep institutional change, in the sense also of mindsets, people's mindsets, norms, beliefs. So everything, I would say, around working gender equality needs to also have a component of working around norms, allowing all different kinds of stakeholders, I would say, to also become more aware of what are their gender beliefs and norms. So that I think is indispensable around gender-based violence. So work of VVOB has also focused on and working with ministries of education to get it to really develop protocols for how TVET institutions can not only prevent, but also how can they, what kind of pathways for support should there be cases of gender-based violence, and what kind of support organizations exist in that case. When do you involve the justice system, for example, all very sensitive matters, and these kinds of mapping of support organizations is the kind of work that we would do with ministries of education, so that it also, the information becomes available to TVET institutions. And then, of course, professional development of both teachers and school leaders. And yeah, it's super important. And you need to, for some aspects of that work, for example, some nice work done in Ecuador with the Ministry of Education has also been on gender-based violence in TVET institutions against LGBTQIA youth, a particularly vulnerable group. And then it's really a matter of waiting for the right policy opportunity of when can you move forward on certain matters, when there is an openness from your partner institution. So, but the mindset is something we always work on. Then for the greening, I think also a lot of mindset change still needs to happen. There's a lot
of awareness at the one side, but also policy change they don't go at the same time. Perhaps they go in parallel. But
absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's very encouraging now. Of course, we're speaking at the moment that the COP29 is taking place, so it's already super encouraging that we have our first human development fixed day there, and that it's really becoming this enabling environment, and the human component in that is becoming more and more top of mind. So we do look forward to seeing more and supporting more governments in including education and training in their NDCs. So that will be part of the work that needs to be done. But I think also supporting ministries and different ministries in policy coherence, because very often, first of all, already there's a challenge of TVET being quite fragmented across many different ministries. For us, then the focus being Ministry of Education. The Ministry of Education has certain goals very often already around education for sustainable development, more and more awareness around the importance of including climate change and climate change education, but is not always very much aware of changes happening in, let's say, the Ministry of Agriculture or Labor or Trade, and those connections to really change, to make those connections and to raise the importance of those green skills and really making sure that the education sector also contributes to them.
This brings us back also to the beginning, to the actual questions that I was asking. So these kind of partnerships bring challenges, but they're also necessary in terms of creating a system around TVET, where actually TVET is also centered. It is at the center of all these interactions. So we need to find a way to also to speak the same language.
True. And I think that's maybe quite an important part of VVOBs and probably also your work is finding this common language and translating between different types of partners, because often we get lost a little bit in translation when we get when things get very technical. But this function of brokering partnerships and helping coordination is actually an important part of VVOB's work. And I think it's almost sometimes easier done when you have a little bit of an outsider perspective as well, when you're not in the trenches of, for example, ministry work, but can help across ministries.
I really do hope that also from the side of VVBB we will be able to, and I'm sure that collaborate. We will get more and more involved, first as external and then continuously more and more internal on the work, because I think that really on the local level this can have a big impact and be scalable across different dimensions. But across all this work and all the initiatives of VVOB, is there a way that you would like to share with us on how we can also learn more, or how we can also engage with the VVOB, and also imagine all the many publications or resources that also you were mentioning earlier on?
Well, thanks for asking, because it's an opportunity to give a plug for our newsletter. I would say that's the easiest way to stay in touch, or to stay at least on top of what is happening at VVOB. So it comes out every 3 months, not too much to overcrowd your inbox. So you can go to our website, www.vvob.org, subscribe on the newsletter. So I would definitely recommend that. We have the Gender Responsive Pedagogy for TVET toolkit coming out early 2025. So keep an eye out for that. And VVOB also regularly produces technical briefs. For example, the latest one that we published is on school leadership professional development, and it also then highlights what is specific about school leadership development for skilling, for example. So really emphasizing the importance of school leaders engaging with the world of work.
Dear Maud, thank you so much for being here with us. It was very, very interesting conversation. And dear everyone, Maud Seghers from the VVOB Global Strategic Education Advisor. See you next episode.